occasions and many initiatives. This panel is titled Beyond Borders, Cyber Capacity Building Across Regions and Cultures. And leading this panel is Mr. Brian Hansen, and he's the Vice President for Regional Security Officer for the Americas at MasterCard. Make them welcome.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to NICE, thank you to Florida International University, everyone except DJ, for me being here today. So actually, thanks to DJ and the great team for putting this conference together. And thank you to all of you who've stuck around, who've done the challenge and made it past lunch on the last day and are here to listen to this great panel of experts that we've been able to arrange and coordinate for you today. So as DJ said, today we're going to be talking and having just a friendly conversation amongst ourselves to discuss cyber capacity building across regions and cultures. We're going to be focusing on the question about how can the United States reinforce its global cyber leadership in a way that strengthens both international partnerships and domestic resilience. For years, cyber capacity building has been often framed as a one-way transfer with expertise flowing outward. But that model is evolving. Increasingly, we are recognizing that strategic engagement abroad directly enhances our capabilities here at home. And simultaneously, that same principle applies within our own borders here in the United States. Cyber capacity building is not uniform here. It spans across regions. It spans across industries and cultures. From rural communities and from rural communities to state and local governments, to tribal nations, to diverse tech hubs, and even critical infrastructure sectors. It is vital that we continue to work together like we are learning and sharing here at this conference to be able to strengthen cybersecurity across these varied environments. So today, we're going to explore how targeted international collaboration paired with strong domestic foundations can expand the U.S. influence, protect critical infrastructure here, and ensure that cybersecurity norms reflect shared democratic values and strategic priorities. And I'll quickly introduce our panelists in case you haven't had the opportunity to meet them. If you have not had that chance, I do encourage you to speak with them after the panel. First, Dr. Barrett Haga serves as the Senior Advisor in the Office of Private Sector Exchange within the U.S. State Department's Bureau of Education and Cultural Affairs. In this role, he provides senior-level strategic leadership for the Bridge USA Exchange Visitor Program, which manages 500,000 exchange participants annually and advances U.S. foreign policy, public diplomacy, and international cooperation. Previously, he served as the Senior Engagement Administrator at the U.S. at the U.S. Economic Development Administration within the U.S. Department of Commerce, where he led international collaborations on economic development. And he's also served as the U.S. delegate to the Organization of American States, where another one of our panelists is coming from. Interesting fact about Barrett is he's fluent in Latin and has graciously agreed to answer all of the questions in Latin. So I'm really excited about that one.
Go gratis tibi.
Right by me is the wonderful Carrie Ann Barrett, and she is the section chief of the cybersecurity section within the Inter-American Committee Against Terrorism of the Organization of American States. Carrie Ann coordinates the cybersecurity capacity building efforts to OAS member states, which the United States is one. She is a trained attorney at law, so she also understands Latin. And with over 20 years of public sector and multilateral experience, she leads a team of professionals to deliver strategic cybersecurity capacity intervention. She's also a wonderful person, and you'll ideally, in fact, I know for sure, you continue in this field, you'll see Carrie Ann down the road at other conferences. On our end, we have also the wonderful Leanne Sperry, who's a workforce professionalization specialist with CREST. If you're unfamiliar with CREST, they are an international not-for-profit membership body representing the global cybersecurity industry. Leanne has extensive experience leading the development of embedding professional recognition across various sectors, including cybersecurity. She leads her organization's workforce professionalization portfolio, setting direction for professional standards, capability frameworks, and progression pathways that support consistent, high-quality professional practice across various sectors. And we're excited to have her here. She flew all the way across the water in the UK, made it here, and then unfortunately she's leaving soon to go back, but hopefully she'll return another time. And then our final panelist is Mr. Randy Pestana, who you've already seen on stage this morning. Although he didn't introduce himself, Randy serves as the Director of National Security Policy and Strategic Engagement at Florida International University's Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy. Randy's experience includes serving in U.S. foreign policy, civil military relations, and security cooperation, with experience most recently at the Pentagon, where he drove defense strategy, coordinated interagency efforts, and engaging with other international partners. Randy also served in the United States Marine Corps, so again, for some of our other veterans that are here in the audience, and it's very much fantastic to have all of you here with me today, so thank you very much. Barrett, I'm gonna send the first question over to you. How can the United States better align its diplomatic, economic, workforce, and cybersecurity strategies to build a durable international partnerships that reinforce a secure and open digital ecosystem?
Well, I could do it in Latin, but I figure most people here speak English. So we're here in Philadelphia, and thank you all for coming here at a moment where the United States and our partners are really thinking hard about cyber resiliency, competitiveness, and the future of the digital cooperation at stage. You know, when you think of cyber capacity building, the answers are the familiar infrastructure, education, capital, regulations, workforce development, et cetera. All that matters, and you're familiar with many of those things. I'm here to talk about something different. I'm here to talk about a simple word that is called exchanges. At the U.S. Department of State, the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, that is all we do. We bring in about 300,000 individuals per year, and about 500,000 that are in the United States per year, to do three things: to connect, build, and impact across these dynamics. Across these programs, we don't move people. We move the number one thing that we all crave for every day, and that's knowledge. We connect them to American communities. We connect them to American institutions, to American families, to American cyber firms, to American companies that really drive our economies, our diplomacy, our innovation, and our long-term structural competitiveness. Exchanges are not just cultural niceties. They give us a competitive advantage. We move more people in the world via exchange than any other country in the world. They keep businesses open at Wisconsin Dells. They help empower semiconductor industries by bringing the technology and the resources and the IP from around the world. These are very simple. They bring these together. There's a sociologist named Mark Granovetter, and I'm a professor by training, who talks about the strength of weak ties, that some ideas are the most important, and our meetings that we meet are the most important things in life are those casual conversations. Michael Porter talks about the relatedness of competitiveness, that live in clusters and regions of suppliers that connect. You take the weak ties of Mark Granovetter via exchange, combine them with the clusters of Michael Porter, and that is why exactly exchanges matter for cybersecurity. They build and strengthen these weak ties to build these and catalyze stronger clusters. It connects local economies and traded clusters, and over time, these people connectivity really drive these new networks. Let me point this out. These do not take jobs away from Americans. These jobs help businesses stay open, they help communities stay competitive, and in many cases, they go for jobs that will be unfilled. But they do one thing. They drive competitiveness. They drive intellectual property, and they drive talent pipelines. I'll end you with this. And BMW, Greenville Spartanburg, brings cybersecurity experts from their BMW entire network around the world. That is why the major mobility cluster in BMW is in Greenville, South Carolina. They are supported by suppliers, logistic networks, and across the way. About 200 to 300 interns and trainees from around the world study with BMW to make that competitive. They work with Clemson University to catalyze IP. They work with Clemson University to look at the cybersecurity infrastructure. That is why exchanges matter, and that is why I'm here today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Barrett. I really like that. I really liked what you said about connect, build, and impact, and the connection that you brought in about weak ties. Like for us at MasterCard, we consider ourselves a technology company. We operate the technology as, imagine like train tracks, and so that's where it drove my thought about ties, like railroad ties. And if you have a railroad tie that is weak, the trains that go on it is eventually going to break, which could cause disaster to humans. It could impact business, logistics, moving along those tracks. So in the sense of what you were talking about with that, again, connect, build, and impact, it's extremely vital to do that, to be able to bring people, to share that knowledge, gain experience. It opens, as you said, business opportunities and then other potential future economic value for the United States, and again, at many levels, whether that's local, state, regional, tribal. So let's move on to that. Let's talk about a little bit about, Carrie Ann, as how the United States can continue to leverage some of these things. If you don't mind, I'd like for you, please, to address how you believe the United States can leverage industry leadership and international partnerships to support international cyber development initiatives without creating a dependency or undermining local innovation ecosystems.
I think I probably want to set a baseline. How many of you have ever heard of the Organization of American States?
Oh, I have.
So it's less than, I think, 10% in the room. So I'm going to set a baseline. Many of you, how many have ever heard of USAID? All right, more hands. All right, so we're going to use that as the model. The Organization of American States is one of the implementers for the United States government, similar to the USAID, but focuses on other areas of security for the Western Hemisphere. So that includes countries from Canada all the way to Brazil. So kind of setting that framework and to understand that as the Organization of American States, the United States is also a member. And as a member of the organization, the US has been a forerunner in setting standards such as NIST and NICE. They've been a forerunner by contributing to many standards globally, and their capacity building programs have always focused on how can we ensure that the beneficiaries from these programs are actually using some of those best practices. So kind of setting the scene that way, I'm gonna just focus on two main ways that this could be done. One is the US actually recognizing that it needs to position itself as an enabler rather than the primary source or operator in some of these countries. And the reason why I raised that is so many people panicked when USAID closed that a lot of the work and the good work that the United States had done would just end. But how we do cybersecurity on behalf of the US government is by setting up and working with some of the local talents that are there and ensuring that we look at training and intelligence sharing that will go beyond just a project date, or when the project ends, then the capacity ends. By doing that, a lot of the things that you look at is some of the companies in the United States that has really good programming. How can we leverage that and provide training to these other countries, whether it be in Latin America and the Caribbean, or whether it be in Asia, wherever it may lay? The idea is, how can you ensure that whatever the US has as one of its best, when it goes into these countries, they're making the connections between the companies that are existing in the country and the companies that exist in the United States. Another way that we could actually leverage the United States and ensure that there is some amount of sustainability and dependency is actually reduced is by thinking through how can you incorporate these regional leaders instead of bypassing them. There are many countries within Latin America and the Caribbean that are forerunners in their own right in our region that have advanced a lot in cybersecurity generally, whether it be through legislation, whether it be through them having talent. A few years ago, Costa Rica was one of the leading chip manufacturers in this region. How can we, as the United States, if you think about it, then leverage and partner with these entities or companies and empower them to be able to be forerunners for the region themselves, so exchanges. So instead of just the United States going into Costa Rica, for example, it takes with them Brazil. Creating an ecosystem itself to be able to support the entities that actually have the talent internally. And I think the dependency will begin to reduce because you're actually enabling and you're actually empowering others to be leaders in the region and not just depend on United States knowledge.
I like that point, Carrie Ann, that you said about being an enabler and incorporating regional leaders, maybe regional companies even, to be part of the decision-making process with you. The audience here at this year's NICE conference is made up of academics and students, some small businesses, medium-sized, even some larger companies, U.S. companies. We've got some nonprofits. So we've got like a wide range of people in the audience today. The thing that I find most interesting, though, is that everybody's here with the same mission to learn more about cybersecurity and to how that can help for their own respective reasons, like how that can help them be as a better person, better state government, better local government, better small business leader, et cetera, et cetera. So enabling that and incorporating those regional ties, I think, is something that happens because regardless, if you're a local government or state government, you want investment in your local region that matters to you. If you're a small community college or a large university like FIU, you need that connections to be able to help your student body understand the world is bigger than
just
this little place
just
where
the
we're
city.
sitting out on the stage right now. So thank you for sharing that. I don't know if any of the other panelists have any thoughts on what Carrie-Ann brought up.
The only thing I'd say is, you know, the OAS is a great example of this, the power of convening, right? And the ability to bring together communities that don't always talk to one another, right? And oftentimes we get to our corner, we wear our jerseys, and we go to talk to other people wearing the same jerseys, right? The OAS is one of those mechanisms, and I've seen it firsthand. Brian, you've seen it firsthand. They go across the region, bring people that that sometimes shouldn't be talking together, to talk together, people that are talking, and then bringing people that haven't talked in forever. So it bypasses these, it bypasses these historical rivalries, these competitive natures. And one thing I'm sure we'll talk about a lot today is cyber is one of those unique fields where elevating others is actually in our own best interest, right? It's kind of giving is the most selfish action in many cases in the cyber field. So the OAS is, again, one of a number of organizations that kind of have that convening capability to bring in partner nations across the region.
You hit the nail on the head. At the Organization of American States, they've got an exchange program that I helped start in 2014 called the America's Competitive Exchange. It is the premier economic development, innovation, entrepreneurial network of the Americas. If I could bring 50 of the most powerful people in the room and give your opportunity, your company, your business, your university, a half a day with them, and everybody in that room has already aligned themselves with offers and looking for certain asks to cut deals, to move the needle. That's what the America's Competitive Exchange is all about. That is just one of the many programs that the Organization of American States runs. Since ACE was created in 2014, over 80,000 opportunities have been generated from these 50 people going twice a year around the country, around the world. They just got back from Memphis, Tennessee. When you think of cyber and research and everything like that, you don't normally think of Memphis. You think of Silicon Valley, Austin, Boston, but Memphis is now cutting deals across the spectrum, particularly on healthcare with Le Bonheur and St. Jude, are now working to test products in Costa Rica, in Colombia, and across the world. That is what ACE is. That combines the situation for exchanges, combines the universities, combines the convening power of the Organization of American States in a single entity. So that's just one of the many programs that you guys have.
And just to kind of tie it back, why is this relevant to you? The conversation that we're having here is relevant to you because you're building a workforce for the United States in cybersecurity, and many of these students that you have never heard about these opportunities. Yeah. And cybersecurity, we always say it, like we start off, oh, it's borderless, it's seamless, you can travel across the world, the skills, you can be at home and do it. These are the kind of exposure that your students may need. Many of you have been asking, how do they get internship? How do they get training hands-on? There's so many opportunities with countries who are less developed than the United States that would love some of the talent, even on an internship basis. So kind of thinking outside of the box is really important.
Yeah, and Carrie and I would send it the other way around too for academics, academia that's here with us today, or small, medium-sized businesses. There's opportunities to be with organizations, regional organizations like yours. There are others, not as nice as you guys, but there are others. And they have the opportunity to send their people also overseas, maybe participate in some of your programs that you have in other countries. Even at MasterCard, we've had some of our talent participate in OAS programs around the region. So wonderful opportunities there for all. Leanne, I'm going to move the next question down to you. How can the United States deepen cyber interoperability with allies to ensure coordinated responses to major cyber incidents while still respecting national sovereignty?
Thank you. So one of the themes that has really come through in the past couple of days is all about partnerships. And I think everybody's been, what we say, beating the drum about partnerships. And I think that is the key that the USA could really do, both on a state level as well as then internationally as well, to really encourage that interoperability. And the way the UK tends to approach it is through what we call mutual recognitions. So that's an agreement of recognising and supporting each other's credentials, what we call competence, and also the capability of these individuals, and what the national sovereignties do as well within those countries. And having an agreement to recognise each other allows the workforce to sort of pivot and flex along with that, to learn best practices where they can and really share that. And one thing we're doing is working with a coalition of countries. It's called the International Coalition of Cyber Security Workforces, so the ICCSW. And we're working to do exactly that with them. We're working with a coalition of countries to try and harmonise where we can, whilst recognising the national requirements that would be imposed on individuals to work in those different countries. But it allows a common understanding then of the skills and the knowledge and the technical capabilities of these individuals working in cyber. And it can then allow that movement very freely and interestingly. And if there was ever a need, which hopefully there won't ever be, but you know, we are human, if there is ever a need for sort of global mobilization, there's that network already built, and that trust element is already there. We already know and understand the capabilities of these individuals that would be brought forward to support with any sort of major incident as well. So that side would already be sort of sorted. You don't have to worry about that. You've done all the research, you can trust each other, and then you can deal with the incident.
Yeah, I think that's super important what you said about the partnerships, the mutual recognition and sharing that workforce knowledge with each other, whether it's behind one of those, what was that you said is mutual recognition is
Yes.
the term? So like, it sounds like a memorandum of understanding. We use that in the US
Essentially,
often. But I think it's important, those are vital, and it's important to have that connection before the crisis happens.
Absolutely.
It's okay for me to be able to pick up a phone and in an emergency here in the US, I can dial 911. I have the confidence that on the other end, there'll be some sort of first responder that'll get to the location for where the emergency is. In a cyber environment, we need to be able to have that connections, and it's often, in my experience, it's often better if we've already done that mutual engagement ahead of time. We've met in person, hopefully, or we've met virtually, or we've trained together. Again, Randy, coming in as a veteran, understands the importance of training as a unit and getting that experience ahead of time before the crisis. So I think that's a great lesson learned there. Thank you for sharing that. Randy, I'm gonna jump over to you if you're ready.
Here goes nothing.
In what ways can international cyber partnerships be used to protect supply chains, critical infrastructure, and emerging technologies, while also promoting a fair and open digital trade, trusted talent networks, and shared economic resilience?
Yeah, that's an easy one. No, I'm kidding. I think it's, again, going back to something that I said earlier here about, cyber being able to support all, right? Other security, especially among partners and allies, is really your security. And especially in this environment where cyber criminals are working beyond borders, everything digitally interconnected, and then cyber is integrated through all walks of life. And as the NFL panel discussion that Bridget led yesterday kind of alluded to, these things that you don't think of as cyber important, right? You think of it as a football game or a TV stream or something like that. Cyber is integrated to all aspects of it. So what does that mean for us is all of us, even those who are non-cyber professionals, even those that are non-technical professionals, those that are walking around the room, those that are serving the food, everyone is a cyber professional, whether they know it or not. So it's extremely integrated. So our responsibility, not just the United States, but all like-minded or individuals across the world, is to develop that base level understanding of cyber, one, but two, find the networks that can be supportive of the overall entities. A couple initiatives that come to mind, and sorry, Carrie, if I'm gonna ruin this for you, but CCERT Americas is a phenomenal initiative, right? Where you have all the different certs from different countries that come together to share the latest vulnerabilities, to be able to patch systems, because the likelihood is if Trinidad is getting a cyber incident occurring, it's likely that Jamaica and Guyana are seeing the same thing. So the ability to be able to share on almost real time what you're seeing is extremely important. Similarly to the United States, right? If one of the biggest efforts is to reduce migration, physical migration across the border, helping economic development through digitalization efforts across the region are going to ultimately lift those ships. So if you're increasing digitalization efforts, you're increasing economic investments, organizations like MasterCard are more likely going to invest in these smaller, lesser developed nations, and it's going to ultimately elevate them to a point that's reducing the migration towards the United States. So things that we don't think as cyber connected really are, and that's that digitalization technological foundation that really kind of shapes that.
Yeah, that's excellent. Did you want to add something, Carrie-Ann? I was just going to say, one of the things that you brought up, Randy, was about how cyber is really integrated into all aspects of our lives. I mean, it's, unless you become you don't want to be in the technology at all and just be like the
nomad?
the Luddite, like a Luddite nomad, I guess, not a digital nomad, but the other way around.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a phone, a smartphone, even if you don't, even if you avoid all of that, operating in the environment that we do, the building, the technology that here, all of that's connected to the internet, the schools where you go to, the trains that you take. The Barrett came up this morning on the train, all of that's connected to technology, again, connected to the internet. So all of that involves cybersecurity to be able to protect that information, to protect that infrastructure so that it can operate and people can arrive safely at their destination or wherever they're gonna go. So I think that's really important. And the other part of it is, but you also brought up, Randy, about how the digital touches lives. At the end of the day, that this cyber environment that we have to live in, the cyber domain, does touch lives. We had the discussion about the Health ISAC yesterday and the significance of protecting the health sector. So I think that's important. And it's not anything different when you travel internationally or when you bring international people here. If I go to Africa, if I go to Asia, if we go somewhere else or somebody from there comes here, again, that digital connection is still there. So thanks for sharing that. Barrett, I'm gonna hop back to you. How can international cyber partnerships strengthen U.S. economic competitiveness by supporting foreign direct investment, export opportunities, and new company creation while building secure digital markets and trusted talent networks?
Well, I'm gonna take this in a completely different angle. Randy and Leanne touched around one word, credentials. And I think that's the starting point. When you look at where we do business around the world, they're aligned with the terminology of how we see jobs. US, Canada, and Mexico are on the NAICS codes, North American Industry Classification Systems. Europe is about 90% aligned with that. Korea, Japan, about 90%. India is getting there, but not quite there. So when we talk about cyber and cybersecurity, is getting those credentials for these countries to adopt the US terminology, or at least close to our terminology of what jobs are. And in terms of the skill sets needed for jobs, the pathways needed for jobs, what type of credentials do they need for certain things? And cyber is such a credential-driven field, that becomes the penetration point to really align these greater ecosystems across the way. When you look at Michael Porter from Harvard, he's got cluster theory. When you look at NAICS codes, it talks about jobs, and to them, certain jobs have value. Whether it's a local cluster, think of the ones that support the ecosystem, or a traded cluster, think high wage, high skill. So when you think of traded cluster, everybody knows about finance in New York, or film technology in Los Angeles, or advanced AI in Orlando with various groups like Lockheed Martin, et cetera. Can we, if over 30% of your localized industry or localized economy is traded, that means it's got a global dynamic and global impact. And about 90% or more of your patent generation is there. So think of high wage, high skill. If we can get countries to adopt that terminology, using cyber as the catalyst, we now know that entire ecosystem, so you know where to target for FDI. You know what to target for exports. If I know that parts of Africa are structurally aligned in terms of our terminology, I know that IT ecosystem that's being created in certain parts of Nigeria is structurally aligned, is compatible. I'm able as a company to sell certain goods and products before anybody else. I know where to recruit certain talent because those incubators, those innovation ecosystems are producing those that are aligned with the terminology that I'm looking at. So that entire ecosystem is connected. And that is the role that cyber can play, since it's such a credential-driven field, that's saying, let's start at that point and get these other countries to adopt these certain standards aligned with the NAICS codes, and then eventually build that out with their economic plans and strategies, so then we know exactly where to go, you know where to go, and we need that two-way give and take in terms of trade, export, FDI, and really innovation ecosystem generation.
Thank you. Any of the other panelists, anything you want to add? I was going to say one of the things I like that you brought up right now, Barrett, too, is just about the adopting terminology and having that be shared and understood globally. One of the things for us at MasterCard, we're about 40,000 employees around the world. 1,200 or so work in corporate security, where I work. But we adopted the NICE standards in terms of framing all of our cybersecurity roles at MasterCard. And what that does for candidates, both internal and external, it gives them a baseline common understanding, no matter where they are in the world, of what this role, XYZ, requires, and what they need to do to either have that or meet it, or be able to be competitive for that role. I was in one of the breakout sessions earlier, and they were talking about just being prepared when you apply for roles, and not necessarily, as the gentleman before here, a lesson that I've even learned myself is you're applying to any role you think you're perfect for, but really looking at what are those standards that that particular organization has adopted and is using, and making sure that it's the same. And that, like you said, will help not just here in the United States for our businesses or institutions, but be able to help globally to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. Randy?
Yeah, and I think this is where, again, I know this NICE conference, this might be licking ice cream cone, but the NICE framework is critical for this, right? And while the NICE framework, and Karen's over there, helping, evolve the NICE framework day to day with the team, it really is, I see it as kind of this critical infrastructure in its own right? This is the foundational framework that can be adopted for municipalities, for organizations to fit what it needs for its uses, right? You don't necessarily have to have all the work roles, although that'd be nice. You don't have to have all the KSAs, although that would be nice. But I think back to when Karen and I traveled to North Macedonia, and one of the things we did was we presented to the Macedonian government, to academic institutions, this is the NICE framework. This is how you now narrow it to fit your critical infrastructure sectors, your specific work roles that you need, your specific skill sets, and aligning it to the academic institutions and the training companies that are ultimately developing those skills to ultimately feed the future workforce of the government. Again, that's just one example, and there's countless examples, and I'm sure Karen, Mike Preble, and the rest of the team can talk about and how the NICE framework was adopted or scaled to the specific role or organization that's ultimately adopting those consistent standards and frameworks.
I'll use a real quick example. Aerospace engineer in the United States is a certain standard, certain technology, certain credentialing. You take aerospace engineer in some countries that don't adopt our structural terminology, it's the person that changes the oil. You try to sell cyber technology, or you try to get anything that you try to sell those in terms of those two different pathways, it's changing an oil versus the person that's actually doing aerospace engineering. Same language in terms of their job, how they're calling them. They're not aligned. So let's get everything aligned and just use the NICE framework and others to really become that catalyst to start driving those industry sectors that are connected across the way.
Excellent, thank you. Carrie Ann, how should regions or partner nations be prioritized for United States-led capacity building efforts? And what models have proven most effective in strengthening resilience while advancing shared economic interests?
So I'm gonna give you a moment in the mind of a capacity building implementer for the United States government. So what you don't know, which I'm gonna give you just a little peek inside of how some of these things work, is the U.S. invests in the OAS by giving what we call a regional grant. That regional grant benefits 34 countries. And if you think about it, when you have a very small amount of food and you have many people in the house, you start to kind of think, okay, do I give it to the smallest one? Because this little tiny one might it's frail, it's gonna fade soon if I don't feed that person. It's kind of those kind of judgment calls we have to make all the time. If it is that we have a request for capacity building, we support countries in doing national cybersecurity strategies, establishing CSIRTs, which you've heard about a lot today, by doing policies, youth and workforce employability and training. We've spoken about certification and credentials. I use the analogy because oftentimes we think about how do you prioritize by thinking who's the weakest person or the weakest country. Cybersecurity, as we heard, I think, in some of the panels yesterday, it's not a matter of resiliency, it's a matter of how quickly you recover. So one of the things that we have done over the years by working with our various missions of the United States in the various capitals is thinking about what are some of the priorities for the United States, but also how can they work with their partner nations for sustainability. Investing in a country not knowing what will happen tomorrow is also a waste of taxpayers' dollars. So how can we ensure that when the investment is done, whether it be time, effort, or products, there's some amount of sustainability. And a lot of that comes from strategically positioning and investing in regional organizations like the OAS. So as an example, everybody's excited for FIFA? Yeah?
Yeah.
Randy mentioned CSIRTs Americas, and I wanted to go back to it because CSIRTs Americas, the US has supported us in ensuring that we had licensing. We would provide 24/7 threat intelligence to 22 countries, 52 certs, including military, law enforcement, and national CSIRTs. Through that community or practice that US has been investing in for the past, I would say, upward of 8 years, we are now able, with FIFA, and with the TTXs that we've been doing, bring together in one room CISA, the Cybersecurity Agency for Canada, and the Mexican CERTs. And because there's been trust built over the years, while the US wasn't instantly seeing how the feeds would just support member states and they're seeing takedowns happening, because of the trust that was built, 3 different countries can sit in a room, 2 different languages, and the OAS has just been facilitating communication, ensuring that they can talk to each other. So when the crisis does happen, they're able to respond. A second example in terms of leveraging and investing wisely is thinking through what are some of the best practices that the US has that we can translate into a regional context. NICE is the example. That's the reason we're all here. About 5 years ago, in the middle of the pandemic, I called Randy and I said, hey, Randy, NICE is such an excellent framework. How can we get it into the region? And sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, do we want to just translate it to Spanish and Portuguese and it's done? Or do we want to explain the reasoning and the logic behind workforce development and why it's important? So what we created instead was the Regional Initiative for Cyber Education and Training, RESET. That has run for 5 years. And what we try to ensure in partnering with NICE and with FIU is have a space in an annual conference that the OAS hosts, where sometimes we have upward of 500 persons from across Latin America and the Caribbean in the room to talk about workforce development, to talk about why it's important. We've not been able to get to the level of what you are able to accomplish here, but what we've been focused on is raising awareness on the importance of having a career pathway with roles specified and how the framework works for you. So I think to answer your question in short is prioritization can always, the knee-jerk reaction is to prioritize based on an emergency. And what I'm suggesting is that prioritization can be done through what is the most sustainable methodology or the sustainable investment that I can have, knowing that the returns may not be immediate, but I'll be able to see it in the long term. And those are the 2 examples.
Yeah, excellent, thank you. Especially the end part where you brought up about prioritizing, right, before the emergency. That's fantastic. It goes back to what Leanne addressed earlier. And Leanne, I'm gonna throw another question in your direction, please. What concrete steps should the United States take to more effectively shape global cyber and technology standards bodies, especially in the context of increasing competition from state-driven models? Easy one.
Easy one, yes. No, thank you, yes. And you're going to do exactly as I say, right? Shaping sort of global standards and being part of that is not just about the documentation. It is about building the capacity to then have that embedded within the different states. And one thing that we do at Crest for capacity building is we've created what's called a CAMP. It's a Cyber Accelerated Maturity Program. And it's been funded by several different sources, mainly including public sectors, and the EBRD has been a funder as well. And it's now a scalable framework that we can take global, and it's been proven. And what it does is it goes out and it supports building the ecosystem of different countries. And it can show them where they are now and then where they would need to be against international standards. And then we provide a mentorship to support them to get there. So we are building, trying to, build capacity and that capability across the globe so that these mutual recognitions I was talking about and the support that we can all give each other within this industry can all be at that sort of common level and understanding. And the NICE framework, actually, just to bring it back to that, has been a great fundamental framework that we've used, common language, common terminology, and ultimately the aim is to achieve harmonization. Because as we all know, cyber is not borderless, or cyber is borderless, and we have to operate in that way where we can as well.
Excellent, thank you. We're at like the most exciting part of today's panel, the lightning round. I'm going to be throwing a question at you all, and you're going to get a minute to respond. So it's the same question, not in Latin, Barrett. Or actually, maybe we've been listening in Latin the whole time. We're just all so attuned to it that we didn't even realize it. But this will be the same question for each of you, but just take a second to think about it, and then you'll have a minute to respond, please. So over the next 5 to 10 years, I'd like you to address one risk and one opportunity that you believe will define global cyber leadership, and how should the U.S. partner across government, industry, and professional exchange networks to advance American competitiveness and stay competitive against alternative governance models? So take a second to think about that. And we're going to start with you, Randy.
Oh, that's fun. So I think risk, I think there's multiple risks here, but I think the biggest one is really isolation, right? And I think to the broader theme of, and the purpose of NICE really is to build that ecosystem of individuals that all aspire to develop the next generation of workforce, to develop the next generation of cyber warriors that could ultimately secure our respective critical infrastructure, not just for the United States, but for partners and allies across the world. And I think the risk is really isolating in a way that ultimately hurts you by not being able to develop and support others. And I think it's twofold. One is, I think U.S. leadership and frankly, great power leadership is necessary, but it's insufficient. Because I think partners themselves need to be able to develop their own native capabilities and be able to invest in themselves.
Yeah, Andy, sorry, I'm cutting you at the minute. You get the opportunity.
Oh, the opportunity is to build that ecosystem and identify what those organizations are, those conventions, things like the Budapest Convention that allow you to be part of a group of trusted vendors, trusted organizations.
Cool, thank you. Barrett?
I think the risk is that sometimes we become risk adverse. We forget the fact that we can fail and still succeed. So by continuously refining your product, you're looking at things to come up with new terminology and saying, well, that didn't work, let's go further ahead and adjust this here. I think we've lost some of that in many places. So we should make sure that we can not be afraid to fail. Now, an opportunity, I think, is to maintain our innovation ecosystems. We need to maintain our patent tech. We generate more patents than any country in the world. We want to invent it here, we want to build it here, and we want to sell it everywhere. Those three things are so key in terms of our stability in terms of the United States and globally that we want to maintain those three things.
Thank you. Leanne?
I'll try and keep it brief. Risk is fragmentation. And, following that allows for vulnerability to happen. And so I believe there's an opportunity for partnerships and those mutual recognitions and just supporting each other within the industry. There's an opportunity at the moment to come together, have agreed terminology, agreed understanding, and an agreed standard to work towards. The opportunity is now.
Wonderful, thank you. Carrie Ann?
I think the risk is the elephant in the room, which is the geopolitical tensions that persons will begin to withdraw. But I think the opportunity is to leverage existing partnerships that are pretty strong and to have a space where dialogue could actually happen. And I think it's a great opportunity to rethink what our future looks like together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts. And
You have
about the risk.
42 seconds.
Sorry, no, we still have time. Lots of time. No, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, especially around the risks and opportunities, right, as we discussed here at the end. I feel like through today's panel, we can see that in many ways, the challenges and opportunities that we encounter here domestically in the United States mirror those that we see internationally. Differences in resources, whether that's human capital, technology, and others, workforce access, risk exposure that we just discussed, governance models. So I think that coming to conferences like this and by investing in inclusive, culturally aware, and regionally tailored capacity building efforts here at home, it's not only gonna allow us to be able to close the gaps within our own ecosystem, but we'll be able to refine our approaches, the partnerships like Leanne brought up, and those best practices that we can then take to a global stage or that local, that regional, that state stage. So thank you all very much for your participation today. Audience, please join me in thanking these wonderful panelists for being here.